Good morning. We'd like to call the Transportation Committee to order, please.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Howard, Alderman Muhammad,
Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Present.
Chairwoman Davis,
Present.
President Reed. You have 4 present, Madam Chairman. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before us today, we have 2 board bills, Board Bill 74 and Board Bill 75. We also have an informational presentation that's going to be led by the President of the NAACP for the City of St. Louis. The reference for this informational session will be Southwest Airlines. So let's do Board Bill 74 first. Who is going to be the presenter, please?
I am for the award. Good morning, I'm Jerry Beckman.
Good morning.
Good morning, committee members. I'm here to discuss this morning 2 related board bills. If it is acceptable to the committee, I'd like to talk about 75 first and then revert to 74.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Okay. So last month, you approved a request to perform a temporary repair to the failed stormwater culverts near the Missouri Air National Guard facility. The temporary project proposed grading the area to allow stormwater to flow for an estimated cost of $4 million. We would like to request your approval to perform a permanent repair to the area before the winter season approaches. The permanent repair is estimated to cost an additional $4 million to completely restore the pavement and infrastructure in this area. Heavy rains will result in the flooding of taxiways and runways in the current condition. I would also like to point out that we continue to work with our insurance claims adjuster and the Metropolitan Sewer District regarding the repair process for potential reimbursement of losses, but we need to perform the repairs now to protect our airfield before the winter season. The ramp, known as the Charlie Pad, is heavily utilized for de-icing of aircraft. Further, we worked with the Comptroller to request surplus funds in our debt service stabilization fund to use for this emergency. The Comptroller approved the use of the funds last week. We respectfully request your approval for this emergency transfer from the debt service stabilization fund to fund the Coldwater Creek Phase 2 project. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Let's see if the committee members have any questions. Alderman Vaccaro? Alderman Muhammad?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Alderwoman Middlebrook?
No questions.
And I have no questions.
So I'd like to make a motion, we pass Board Bill 75 out with the due pass recommendation.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second? I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Howard, Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Chairwoman Davis,
Aye.
President Reed. You have 4 aye votes, Madam Chairwoman.
Board Bill 75 has been passed from committee. Thank you. Go right ahead with Board Bill 74.
Thank you. With that approval, I'd like to present Board Bill 74 for the Public Works Project to authorize emergency repairs for Coldwater Creek Culvert Repair Phase 2. This board bill amends the airport's fiscal 19 Public Works Ordinance to include Phase 2 of the culvert repair, and it authorizes the airport to proceed with the emergency project using the funds transferred into the ADF per Board Bill 75. Are there any questions?
Alderman Vaccaro?
No questions?
Alderman Muhammad?
No questions.
Alderwoman Middlebrook?
No questions.
So I'd like to make a motion, we pass Board Bill 74 out with the due pass recommendation.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second? I'll second it. Move.
Previous rule.
Hearing no objections, Board Bill 74 has been passed out of committee. I thank you.
Thank you.
We have informational session that was asked for by the NAACP. I thought it was necessary to air this concern. I know that it has been moving about through the airport system, with our airport director and their working relationship with Southwest Airlines and all of their legal teams there. But sometimes you just need to hear directly from people who have been affected by a particular issue. You have received a letter from Southwest that gives you their position on what has happened and what their remedy is. So you have that side before you. They chose not to come here and speak today, and so they have that right. But we do have some individuals who have signed up to speak. But the first thing we'll do is have a presentation done by Adolphus Pruitt with the NAACP to explain to us exactly what has occurred thus far, and then we'll have some speakers who have been affected directly speak with us. Mr. Pruitt.
So, Madam Chair, I have an 11:30 appointment that I have to go to. So I'm not walking out on anything, but there's no other voting. Thank you.
No, this is just informational, there'll be no.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, member of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to share with you what I think is a very serious and pressing issue of bias and discrimination that is ongoing, that has been systemic for a minimum that we can document for 10 years, and it's all is happening on city-owned property. So let's be clear. The city of St. Louis has entered into a contractual agreement with an entity that is fostering a environment that is discriminatory in nature, especially as relates to its African-American employees. Once it was documented by us and presented to Southwest, Southwest then met with the city council's office, told them some stuff, for lack of a better term, basically admitted that the stuff contained in the report that we documented was factual. They said some of it was dated and had been addressed, and I guess it was dated since we did a 10-year look at what Southwest, what's been going on out to Southwest, the St. Louis station. They also said that they had moved and or terminated some employees for some of the stuff that was documented again in our report, and basically told the city of St. Louis, told the city council this matter, in our estimation, is closed. It took several, at least 6 months, to get the city council's office to even admit that they had a communication from Southwest. And we finally got hold of it. We then subsequently met with the mayor's office, director of airports, city councilor, director of public safety, and said, listen, Southwest has, in no unspoken terms, have said that they found what we put in here. As again, they said some of it is dated but factual. They said some of the present day stuff we found in our report, they acted on and disciplined or transfer employees, which again validates what we had documented in our report, and said we would like to sit down with you and discuss this matter because we feel that it's closed. Our position is that we asked Southwest for a certain set of data that would tell us once and for all to what extent this problem exists. We asked them simply, tell us how many African Americans have been disciplined versus non-African Americans. Tell us how many have been fired or terminated versus non-African Americans. Tell us how many have been fired, terminated, disciplined by gender, male versus female. Tell us how many have come in the training process where they're working during this probationary period and they did not become employees. Tell us those simple facts, because that data in itself will let us know to what extent the problem is going on in Southwest, and we asked for that data over a 10-year period. Southwest refused. They refused the city council's office, mayor's office. They asked for it. They told them no. I had the director of the airport tell me, well, Pruitt, based on our agreement, all we can do is deal with anything Southwest does that is detrimental to passengers. I said, well, that's a problem. Because what you're telling me is that as a public entity, that you have citizens, black citizens, from the city of St. Louis, working on city-owned property, being discriminated against, and the tenant can tell the city that we don't have to share that information with you, especially when embedded in all of those documents or agreements and passages that the lessee, the tenant, says we would not operate in a discriminatory manner. Those passages, in our estimation, hold no water. Why are they there? If the city can lease its property to somebody and have them enter into an agreement where they say they would not operate in a discriminatory manner while using the city-owned property, and they agree to that in the covenants of a contract or a lease, and then you come and tell me that it's unenforceable, for us as a mission of dealing with racial bias and discrimination, that is a serious problem. It is a significant flaw in city government that it cannot ascertain whether its own citizens are being treated like they on some plantation back in the 1700s. And then, of course, Southwest has dominance. It owns technically the East Terminal, and it is the largest carrier and generates all its revenue. And so that part of it makes me even sicker, because there are some folk within city government that won't admit that their motivation for not being more forceful with Southwest on this issue is the concern about the potential loss of revenue. Ironically, embedded in their contract, it basically says that if Southwest leaves, or if the city terminates their lease, and it's found that they had just cause, and I hope our city councilor believes that discrimination against black folks is just cause, that if you have just cause, that Southwest is on the hook to give the city all the revenue it would have derived from the life of the lease anyway. Southwest isn't going anywhere. Corporations of this size do not walk away from profit centers of this nature. It does not happen. And if it does, I'm glad we support at least to look at privatization. I'm glad, because I'm quite sure that there are plenty of other carriers that will replace them. It is not our intent, it is not our objective to malign, to destroy, to ruin a corporate citizen of the city of St. Louis, but it is our mission. It has been for well over 100 years to fight and deal with bias and discrimination wherever it may be, and especially when, let's be clear, especially when I have African American employees calling the NAACP and saying, listen, we are being treated in a very harsh and discriminatory and a biased matter. They're calling the oldest, the largest, most significant civil rights organization in the world and asking for help. And we go to city government who we feel has as much of a fiduciary responsibility to protect its citizens, and especially its citizens on its property. We think they have just as much responsibility to act and to act forcefully as we are. And that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. So let's be clear. A couple of years ago, a little bit over a year ago, the NAACP at the state level passed a travel ban, which was subsequently ratified by a national board in October last year, which is still in full force and effect. And if the city does not have the gumption, the kahunas, to deal with this matter in a forceful way and secure the information to ascertain to what extent the problem exists out at Southwest Airlines in the St. Louis station and across the country, then we have no choice but to use that tool to inform people of what's going on at St. Louis's airport, which is going to have a significant impact on travel and commerce to this city. See, a lot of folks think the travel advisory is dead. Well, let's just say it may be coasting. But we're prepared to put nitro in the tank and use it. And maybe at the Southwest holds the city and this region hostage for a long enough period of time, then maybe the city will do what we think it should be doing. And this is not an attack on this committee or any member of this committee or the Board of Aldermen at all. Our conversations, our presentations to date have been with the executive level of the city, with its counsel's office, and with the director of the airports. And they have been unable to protect its African-American citizens on city-owned property. And so now we're asking this committee to please get involved, get engaged, use your subpoena power if necessary, but get the information. We have a right to know, you have an obligation to know. And so the best way to put it is, when government fails to protect its citizens, then the citizens have all the right in the world to act aggressively against government and necessary to protect themselves. Citizens have the right to organize, to act, to do everything in its power to protect its rights. And the African American employees at Southwest have rights that government is not protecting at this point in time. And so I hope, Madam Chairman, that you and this committee will work with us. We'll go over the information that we shared in our report. Oh, and by the way, imagine the letter from the Transit Workers Union at their highest level. A letter that they wrote to Southwest that basically said, contrary to employee first principle that the company was founded on, there is now an absolute, intolerable, and cancerous situation at Southwest. Ground workers are flagrantly mistreated and abused by management in shockingly high numbers. Members are being disciplined, suspended without pay, and fired for alleged offenses which are far too frequent and arbitrary in nature. Since January of 2017, 2,700 disciplinary actions and terminated 468 of them. Southwest has a problem. This is from the union. This is the union talking about what is happening nationwide. And St. Louis is one of the places that is suffering from it. And the fact that this is not just the NAACP, this is labor. At the national level, this is labor. This is labor documenting what they see going on at Southwest Airlines, and labor documenting what goes on here in St. Louis. It's something we had to deal with. We had to deal with in aggressive matter. Madam Chairman of the committees, I really do appreciate you taking the time to listen to what we have to say. I'm prepared to answer any questions, give you any additional information you may need. It is not our intent to disrupt transportation and commerce with respect to Lambert Airport, but if that's the only tool that we have in our toolbox, is one that we prepare to use. We just believe that the Board of Aldermen and this committee has better tools than we do, and we would just hope that you will utilize them in a way to help us eliminate this sort of discriminatory practices that are going on by Southwest against its employees, specifically its African-American employees out at the airport. There's two things in the report, though. Imagine you're at work and the unrest is going on in Ferguson, and you get these Facebook accounts from all these employees in Southwest, and the Facebook account says, these niggas come to our neighborhood, we shooting them. These are people you work with every day. Imagine you are sitting in the lounge and we are transitioning from President Trump, from Obama to President Trump, and Obama and his wife get on the helicopter, and white employees say, wouldn't it be nice if the helicopter fell out the sky? Imagine when you're at work and you have the radio on and you hear somebody say, hey, there's some bags out on the tarmac by a plane, and somebody yells over the mic, somebody white says, let the niggas get them. Imagine on Black History Month when you want to, the first African-American president, and you allowed to put things on the wall and hang up to commemorate Black History Month, and you put a picture up of that first African-American president, and a white employee takes it down, says it's inappropriate, and management does nothing about it. Just imagine. Just imagine all of that going on city-owned property. Just imagine. Thank you, Madam Chairman. If you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. I'm going to let the committee members go first. Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. President. You painted such a vivid picture, and I don't think that this type of action has any place in city government, let alone city property. Just by chance, do you have any members of any former workers of Southwest with you?
We have a number who have signed up to testify, and they here. We even have some from as far away as Houston and Florida who come in to support what's going on and to document and this particular. Nowhere else in the country are black workers for Southwest are getting what is happening here today. Nowhere else in the country. Nowhere else in the country. But the same things are happening all over the country.
No further questions, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Alderwoman Millerbrook.
I have no questions.
Okay, I have, I think I may have a few things that I'm going to need information on, and I'm assuming a lot of this is in the report that you mentioned. And so for me, I'm going to need to know how many employees Southwest has around in its entire company. I'm also going to need to know, how many complaints have been forwarded to EEOC based on work environment, the treatment of employees, and how many of those were resolved in the positive way for the employees.
I can answer that now, none.
Okay. So none, okay. And then, unfortunately, we've had so many things going awry here. Did you send us that report that you just mentioned?
Yes,
You did send it to us? Okay.
yes.
I'm gonna make sure
I
that
can resend.
we may need to, because we've had a lot of problems here, IT problems and everything else. Because I want to make sure that all the committee members get the report, have an opportunity to read it, so they can have a clear understanding.
Madam Chairman, here's a copy.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll make sure that everybody gets this today. And also, I want to ask you a question. Do you have the capacity and the relationships with other entities that might be able to help with this situation? I know that we probably need to reach out to some based on where we go from here, because there's a lot of things that I believe that we can resolve as a city. First of all, the first thing that any corporate entity will say to you is, you don't have the right to come in and tell me how to deal with my personnel matters. I've been down that road before. I've worked with EEOC, so I know the answers for them. And I know how to get to the right place to help them remedy those things. I also know that some people will say that the contract that we have is only one providing space for an operation. And for me, I'm going to have to read the contract and make sure that we have all the appropriate things in that contract to allow us to do some other things.
But, Madam
But so answer my question for me, though. Are you in a position, because you know we're talking about mediation and other things. So,
let's just say that, you know, we've read the document fairly well. Again, all city documents and board bills and ordinances that approve those documents contain some broad blanket language that says that the other entity would not violate discriminatory laws and would operate in a non-discriminatory manner. And either that broad covenants within the document, either they have standing or they don't. If they don't have standing, if they are maligned by other language in there, then as our position is that the city, in putting that language in there, is disingenuous, and the language does not accomplish what it's intending to do, because it is something that is simply being ignored, and the city is basically saying, because of these other covenants, this language is null and void. We have a serious problem with that. There's no way that you can craft language that says somebody would not discriminate utilizing on your property, and they do it, and you say there's other language that disengages that obligation for them to act in an appropriate way. Something's wrong with that. something's terribly wrong with it. And especially since the city in some cases are utilizing federal funds to assist that airline with improving and expanding those very same facilities. And all of the city stuff has that non-discriminatory language in it, all of it. Right now, we're wrestling with the fact that that language being in there is voided because of other language, which means now we're questioning that language in all city contracts, in all city ordinances. If it has no force of law, then it's window dressing, and we're going to have a very serious problem with that, because it is the one thing that we want to rely on to protect at least the African American citizens or minority citizens from the right that, heck, the Supreme Court and the Civil Rights Act of 64 and 65 and all of those things meant something. But if the city is embedding covenants that says you would not discriminate or act in a discriminatory manner, and have other covenants in there that are rendered that null and void, you're not protecting me. You're not giving me any protections from discrimination. And so not just, we're looking at it from this standpoint, but if the city continues to insist that that broad language they have no force to do anything with because of some other language, then we're questioning that language in all city contracts, whether it has force, period. And if the city, council's office, the legal team, let's be clear, we're citizens of the city of St. Louis. That city's council's office is our lawyers too. Taxpayer, that's our lawyers too.
That's right.
And so if our lawyers cannot craft language within documents that protects me and people like me from being discriminated against, I have a very serious problem with that. I have an extremely, very serious problem with that. And so far, that's what it seems to be doing.
Okay. I have exhausted my questions and requests. The next thing I'd like to do is to have whomever is here from the legal side of the airport operations to come up and speak, whether that is from our city councilor's office or the attorney that actually represents Lambert. So whomever wishes to speak, I need to hear from you so that I can also be prepared for the legal side of this as well. So Attorney Bush, are you coming up? Okay. So I assume, good morning, I assume both of you will have something to
I'm
say.
Julian Bush. I'm the city councilor. This is Mario Pandolfi. He's from the city councilor's office. His particular assignment is to work at the airport. I really came today just to listen. I'm not here prepared to talk, but let me say a few things in response to what you just heard. And
Thank you.
Mario, who is intimately involved in these things on a day-to-day basis, he'll correct me, I'm sure, if I make a misstatement. If I understood correctly what I heard, the gravamen of the complaint that's been made directed at the city councilor's office is the city councilor's office inability to compel Southwest Airlines to provide certain statistical information regarding their workforce. And it's true, we don't have the ability to do that. Southwestern Airlines is a private company. Its relationship with the city of St. Louis is defined by the contract between the city of St. Louis and Southwest Airlines. There is a provision in that contract that provides that Southwest Airlines cannot discriminate on the basis of race with respect to its workforce. And if they do discriminate on the basis of race, then they have breached their contract with the city of St. Louis. But there is no provision in that contract that gives the city of St. Louis the right to compel the airline to provide the statistical information that Mr. Pruitt seeks. So we don't have the ability to compel Southwest Airlines to do that. If it was the desire of the Board of Aldermen that there be a provision in the next contract that we have with Southwest Airlines that would compel Southwest Airlines to provide this kind of statistical information that Mr. Pruitt wishes. We can negotiate that with Southwest Airlines, and perhaps the next contract would have such a provision, and that would permit us to compel them to provide that information in the future. But there's nothing in the contract the City of St. Louis has with Southwest Airlines today that permits the City of St. Louis to compel the production of that information. However, one might wish that it did. Our relationship with Southwest Airlines is defined by the contract. Have I misspoken?
The only thing I would add is that, to keep in mind that the agreement that we have with Southwest Airlines is an airport use and lease agreement. And as you know, that agreement is negotiated with all the airlines. The terms of that agreement are the same terms for every signatory airline at the airport. And negotiated through a process, in this case, we've been on a 5-year plan. Last time we negotiated this was, the new agreement started in July 1st of 2017. And we entered into negotiations with the airlines a good year before that. The provisions that are in our contract, as the city councilor points out, is very clear, obviously, and there's a number of other provisions that make it very clear that the airline, in this case Southwest Airlines, must comply with all federal laws, rules, regulations. Very broad language. It talks about environmental things, all kinds of laws. But in particular, there's a clause in particular about not discriminating at the airport or on our premises. And that covenant is not superseded. It is not subject to or some other clause contouring it. It is totally and completely enforceable and is not moderated by any subclause of any kind. Any discrimination, race, color, age, sex is prohibited, and if so, then our remedies are under contract law. The problem is the issue that's come before us is compelling Southwest Airline or any other airline to provide this information about confidential, privilege information. It is not information, quite frankly, that I'm aware any public entity, private entity would provide. Could they agree to do so contractually? I suppose they could, if you could get them to agree to such a thing. But having said that, I want to also make clear that this is a Title VII issue. If this was a Title VI issue, it'd be very different circumstances. The law allows us, requires us, in fact, to take affirmative action. It requires us to investigate, to report it immediately to the FAA, and the FAA, working with them, would probably have the sponsor, the city, the owner of the airport, take up that investigation, and depending on it, the results would go from there. But this is not a Title VI complaint. We made clear this from the very beginning when we heard about these issues, and we took our responsibilities seriously under our agreement, as a sponsor, under our grant assurances. We have an obligation. We didn't just sit by and ignore this. We investigated to the extent of making immediately inquiries with Southwest Airlines. We had numerous conversations, meetings with them. We wanted to know certain information about EEOC complaints, human rights complaints. But in the end, the sponsor of the airport, as acknowledged by the FAA, by the way, to Mr. Pruitt, is not responsible for Title VII issues. It's not to say that we don't care what happens in our leasehold areas, but the process, and I think this is important to make everybody understand, is that the process for dealing with employee-related discrimination matters. There is a process on the federal and state level to protect people, and that is the EEOC and the Human Rights Committee. That is the process, and if that process isn't used, people can lose their rights. And so it's very important to make sure people know what their rights are and that they take available so that if there is an issue going on, they have a mechanism. And that mechanism is not the city councilor's office. That mechanism is the EEOC and the Human Rights Commission. And we've been monitoring and making sure periodically, I personally make calls to the legal counsel for Southwest Airlines, verifying whether there are EEOC complaints being filed or human rights complaints being filed. And to our knowledge and what we've been told, the answer is no. So we take our responsibilities very seriously. We do care what's happening in our leasehold. One of the things that I know, I can tell you, the mayor, the city councilor really stressed about this in the very beginning when our conversations with Southwest, when we heard about this, was we wanted to know what they were doing. They explained to us their process, how they investigate, their independent teams, that they were going in to make sure people were retrained, looking at past and present, making sure that, you know, these kind of situations, if there are happening, what's happening and what's going on. So they reported back to us. What I've liked, you know, detailed information and that, but as a lawyer, I know that that's not likely. No company is going to provide that to us. At the same time, though, we did have our obligations under our lease, under our grant assurances. We did make certain that Southwest was taking these matters seriously, as in the letter, it went to the very top of their organization. They send their teams in. We know there was some consequences. There obviously were issues that were addressed. Southwest, I believe, has made it clear to Mr. Pruitt that if there are issues going on now, to inform them, give them the information, and they will act very promptly on those matters. And so we're in this position right now today is that, you know, we are, I guess, in the end, I would close with this, that the city, the owner of the airport, is and has been and is in compliance with its obligations under the AUA and its obligations under its grant assurances. I think that's what I would end with.
Okay, so I appreciate the additional information on the legal side. A couple of things that I concluded from that is in order to get additional information provided, there will have to be a different process taken that our legal department is not in a position to make that happen. I also concluded that the individuals that have been wronged should also use all of the other federal departments and state as well that can also provide assistance, and also that sometimes pushing an issue through the right processes gets you there faster. And it's not one of those things where we have to say to someone, you should just let it go or leave it alone, but we should help you move on, because at this particular spot we're in now, we can make it known to the public. We can suggest some things to Southwest, but until we have opportunity to do a couple of more things with this committee, I think that we just need to continue to probe.
And I would add, Ms. Davis, as you well know, you, as a TNC chair, and you sit on the airport commission, and
Yes.
you've seen over the months that you've been there, and I know before this, you served on the commission. So you know the airport and the processes, and I think you know the relationship that we have with Southwest Airlines. They are an important air carrier here. Having said that, we've had also a very good relationship with them. I think the mayor's office as well as the director, believe me, they have, as has been spoken about, requested Southwest to provide it, asked if they would provide this information requested. Of course, they refused, and we understand why. As you say, there's not a mechanism contractually for us to force them to provide this type of confidential information. And so what our concern is, or my concern as a lawyer, is I would express and reaffirm that if there are, and my concern would be, forget about Southwest, forget about the airport. There are employees who are being discriminated against. If there's those kind of atmospheres that are going on at St. Louis or Southwest or any other tenant or anything else, the biggest concern I would have is that those employees are aware of the fact that they need to get to the EOC and the human rights and file a claim right away. Because what can happen if they think that their issues are being addressed by someone else outside that format, and as you know this, there's a time issues here.
Right.
180 days, you can lose your
Right.
rights. So
That's the
biggest,
unfortunate part. Most people don't know their rights,
Right.
and they don't know the timelines because it's never, ever explained through any personnel
Clear enough.
process when you're hired.
You're right. And that's my concern. So outside the Southwest context, in the very broadest sense, the biggest concern I have in an issue like this as a lawyer is that there is an individual who is being discriminated against, that they don't get to the EOC, they don't get their claim filed and protected so they can make themselves available, and that's what I was saying before. That's the system that's in place at the federal and state level to protect our citizens. And that's my pet peeve, I might say, concern, not Southwest and not the airport.
Well, you know me by now, because I don't mind speaking my mind. I don't care what your title is. I don't care how many zeros you have on your bank account.
I know
What's
that.
right is right, okay? So, we are going to continue to probe. I also want to hear from those individuals that have been harmed. I also want to express that when you are dealing with situations like this, what most people don't realize is those that were harmed in a work environment, there are other people who have been harmed as well. They don't want to come to work. They become ill. They become depressed by even just looking at these situations carried out. And so that's the other part of this. We want people to have healthy work environments. You got to go to work because you got to feed your family. You got to do things. And so even if you're not directly a part of this infraction, you are suffering as well. And so I'm hoping that the employer here understands that part too, and is also looking at how to remedy that, not just deal with isolated issues, but deal with it overall for a company image and process. We also need to help educate people. I think that's something that we can do as well as an airport. You know, I talk about this all the time, even dealing with small businesses. We need to provide them with information to help them. I do know that most people do not understand any of this EEOC process. And it may be in a handbook somebody gave them. How many people read their personnel handbook?
It's on a bulletin board, but
On a book,
again,
you
nobody
walk
sees
past
it.
it 99,000 times.
Right.
Okay? The other thing too is, do you know and understand all of the federal departments that are available to you? Because you see, you can send almost any complaint to the Department of Justice. And if the right number of people send it, somebody's getting ready to call and walk on that turf and find out what's going on. There is no reason why we can't help people. No reason at all. I understand that Southwest provides jobs to this region, economics growth for a number of different things. If you look at all the different tentacles that it's attached to, that is all wonderful. But at the end of the day, it's all got to be right for everybody. And so I am not going to take that lightly, okay? Even when I was president of the school board, I would tell parents how to sue us when we were wrong. I would hold their hand.
I'm glad I wasn't your lawyer.
Okay, oh no, you know Ken Brostron over there with Lashley. He could not believe it, but it brought more trust to us as a Board of Education. It allowed people to want to learn more about their rights, and they trusted me. So when I'm in other situations and I say trust me, people will trust me. So we've got to learn how to, help those individuals. I don't know if we can do anything to help the circumstances that we're about to hear, but we're going to do all we can to put some things in place and how we operate for the future. And most especially when we talk about looking at our contracts, I'm going to ask for that to happen. I think that's something that this committee can learn and understand and make sure it is right on behalf of all of the contracts that we have dealing with transportation and commerce. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think that's something that we should be doing.
Well, it was the city council that mentioned it, actually.
I'm sorry, Julian, you did mention that.
I mentioned it. Now, it's a matter to negotiate,
Oh, no. I know about negotiating.
because we want it signed in the contract.
But
we
I
have-
was taught
we have to ask-
years
We have
ago.
to ask for it before.
Yes.
Yeah.
How to do gentle arm twisting. Just don't break the arm, but you can gently arm twist and get what you want in negotiations. So I understand that part of it. But, Mr. Pruitt, you have something you need to add?
I'm gonna make sure we clear why they here, because, again, they just said something that again causes me heartburn.
What?
He said that the language in the contract for non-discriminatory is, nothing supersedes it, is in full force and effect, but he said, but he's not saying, he's saying in so many words, but in order for them to determine whether the discrimination or the violation of that contract is happening, they are limited in what they can ask for to do that.
Yes.
So which means that clause does not give us the protection. If you can, if I can violate a clause of the contract, and you have no ability to compel me to get the information you need to determine whether I'm in violation, I don't have, that clause doesn't protect me. It doesn't protect black people.
Well, that's why we're talking about how we can look at the next contract for sure and try to put ourselves in a better position with different types of negotiations.
Because,
in that.
and I'm saying because, in other words, the city, outside of asking the perpetrator, are you acting in a discriminatory manner, which they say they did, and the perpetrator said, oh, no, of course not. And yeah, we may have found this and that, and we dealt with it, and that is the extent that the city can ask or probe to determine whether an entity is in violation of a clause of a contract with the city, especially as relates to the treatment of people in a discriminatory manner. That's a very serious problem. That is a very serious problem, because they just said they can't ask.
Right.
What would you ask for to determine whether they're acting in that way or not? You haven't interviewed no employee. They say they did investigation. They interviewed not one employee. And let's be clear about EEOC. You'll find where they have, but let's be clear. EEOC is ineffective. It is ineffective. We bring cases before it all the time. It's ineffective. And two is that we keep talking about the obligation for the feds and the state to enforce and protect city citizens on city property where the city has a contract with them, where they pledge to the city they will not discriminate. The city is the first line of defense. We shouldn't have to boot it to anybody. If I had to rely on the feds and the state to enforce a clause in the contract that I have with the city, I'm a citizen of the city, that's a problem. I'm not saying they shouldn't use these other areas. What I am saying is that the front line, the person who should be more concerned about what's going on, the person who should want to know for definitely whether something is occurring or not, should be the person who has a direct contract with the other party, and in that contract they pledges to us that they won't act in a certain way. And if we cannot if we cannot do the right sort of investigation to get the information we need to determine whether it's going on or not, it's a flawed clause.
Well, that's one of the things that we're talking about now, how we can move in that direction in our contracts.
And that language, and I'm sorry, and that's the language that's in all city contracts, am I right?
No.
Non-discrimination?
Yeah.
There's non-discrimination.
Okay, so which means that it's the same problem. In any other contract, if somebody says they're being discriminated against, the city says, hey, are you doing it? Well, no, we're not. We needed to have this information, that information, in order for us to determine whether it's happening or not. Oh, no, we can't give you that. We don't, you are not obligated to get that. Which means, that's like telling the police, you call for a crime and the police are going to investigate and you tell them there's some information that they can't have. How are they going to do an investigation? I don't,
Well, I tell
we
you-
have a serious problem with
I
that
tell you
clause.
where we are at this particular moment. We are at the beginning of a effort that is going to require a lot on our part.
And some real lawyers.
A lot on our part. We're going to have to work together to figure this out so that we are not in a position where we cannot help our citizens, okay? Now, I need to allow the committee members, if you have any questions of our attorneys, Alderman Muhammad.
Madam Chairwoman, I will yield back all questions in the interest of time.
All right, Alderwoman Middlebrook? All right. So guys, there are no more questions of you. We do have some people who signed up to speak. I will share with you that normally we do 3 to 5 minutes per person. If you know, what I'm going to suggest to you is, because I believe you all know each other in the circumstances, that you share information with us that allows us to get the full picture without that picture being repeated, okay? So we can get as much information as possible, okay? So could you get the list right there for me, please? Okay. I'm sorry, are you saying we're just going to have one speaker? So I have Tricia Anderson here. That's you. Okay, Jocelyn Robinson. Okay. And, oh, that's a pretty name, and I can't see it. Oh, Chandra, okay. So, Tricia, why don't you come up? You're on here first. Oh, okay, that's fine. You can sign.
Thank you for allowing me to speak into the Lambert Airport officials also. We know it's all a money game with the city.
I need you to come to the microphone. I need you to give your name and
Okay,
everything.
Tricia Anderson. We know it's a money game, the contract with Southwest Airlines. It's all about money. It's been about money since slavery. The thing is if we're working in an environment, we shouldn't be treated like slaves. I'm pretty sure when you get the report from Mr. Pruitt, you'll find that blacks have seen nooses hung up in the airport on the ramps. And the airport will say, well, we can't find it. But if it was a black person that hung that noose or did something inappropriately, they would find it. So moving forward, when you all decide if you're going to take on another contract with a company as large as Southwest, because I know it's all about money, you may want to think about how blacks are being treated. Not even blacks, but you have some Hispanics, people of color. You have people that, you can have a black person that says boo and a white person that says boo. Well, the black person is going to get fired, no matter how many years they've been there, and the white person is okay. You know, a white person can do 20 times more than a black person that has nothing in their records. And it's okay for the black person to be fired and the white person praised. Now, what they do in management at Southwest, because when this report started, it started June 13th of 2017, because I'm the one that officiated the report. And with me coming out with that, a lot of people all over the country came out, and I had no idea that all the things that were happening within the company that I thought I loved so much. But you have people that in management, if they do something wrong, this report that happened, Mr. Pruitt, to give it to you, instead of them firing the management that was the cause of majority of the problems that were at Lambert, instead of them being fired, white people are given the option to step down and transfer to another city. Whereas blacks, they lose their income for their family, their insurance. I was without insurance for a whole year. And you know, it meant nothing. It means nothing. So the things that they're allowing, the people that have started this station from when it first opened, all these people grew up together. So they band together, white people, they band together, whatever they don't like, they want to get rid of. And right now they have a thing going around, the station is too black. So the whites are trying to get rid of the black people, and that's not right. They don't have any concern about what happens in my household versus a white person's household. It's all about them. And moving forward in that contract, you know, you have people that come to this city and want to be a part of this city, enjoy and see things. But if they knew about all of the racial discrimination that was going on, why don't the city do something to make it different?
Can I stop you for a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm one of those persons, and they know me, I'm a very factual individual.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I feel your pain.
Yes, ma'am.
And what I need are some facts. I need to know the situation
Yeah.
that you went through.
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
need-
So with
give me some
myself,
facts.
I did something they considered as a violation of social media. I sent something to a white person by mistake, because I wasn't trying to send it. I'm from the South, so it was very dear to my heart. It was 3 KKKs with a Confederate flag hanging a black girl. The white girl was offended. So I lost my job because she was offended, but the same day, she showed it to at least 20 people in the station. And some of those blacks said, why do you continue to show that? Now I'm offended. She's still there. That's one fact. Another fact is that I witnessed from day one in customer service of things happening, and I complained and nothing ever happened because it was a white person that I was complaining on. Let's see, during the election of Donald Trump, there are certain things that we're not supposed to talk about. Politics is one. So once he was elected, the whole station changed. So it's like the whites felt that they were empowered to say whatever they wanted, and it happened. There was a white man that sang a song about Obama, and I told him I was offended. He did it again, and I was offended. So I reported that to management. Nothing occurred. That's one. There was another young lady, I'm in the break room, and she's talking about hanging a Confederate flag, how big it is, and how much it costs, and how everybody's praising it. Well, I don't think you should be talking about a Confederate flag in the break room or at work, period. I'm offended because I know what the Confederate flag stands for. I'm from the South. Nothing ever occurred to her about that. I was disrespected by a passenger. There's also boarding issues there, pre-boarding on the airplane. I was cursed out by a white passenger, and they let her fly. But if a black person, which I've witnessed several times, black people voicing themselves like, you know, that shouldn't have happened, and I need to go on because that customer service agent was wrong, well, they will escort her out of the airport with the police. But see, whites can do it, but blacks can't. That's a fact. There was a former employee, she is white, and she offended a Hispanic worker and told her, you need to learn English and go back to your country. This young lady cried. The woman did it twice, and they told her not to do it anymore. She did it again. Nothing ever happened. And it's okay for this Hispanic to feel though, you know, she can still, she can't do her job because this person is telling her she should go back to her country. If she's here, she probably has a right. She's on the airport ground, so I'm pretty sure they did background checks and everything for her to be there. I'm sorry, I didn't know I was going to do all this, but I'm going to sit down. I'm going to make one more point, and I'm going to
Okay.
sit down. There's an incident with, there was a manager who was forced to step down as supervisor and move out of the city. He used to make a lot of racial comments, and a young man came in. He was an airport wheelchair pusher, and he wanted a job, and he was trying to get this manager to help him. And when he walked out, another young lady said, well, I don't think you should hire him. And I said, well, why would you say that? She said, well, look at him, look at his hair, and look, he was black. And when she walked out the room, I explained to him, I don't think that's right for her to say that and for you to sit there and think it's okay and not take her aside and reprimand her for that, because that was discrimination, and he didn't even know, oh, my mom is right, that he was being discriminated against, you know what I'm saying? So the list goes on and on and on. I have 5 years of things that are facts that occurred in front of my face, and I've reported it to management, and it's just been shut down. We'll take care of it. Okay.
So the incident that management dealt with you, what was the outcome for you in your personnel status?
Oh, I was terminated.
Okay.
She's still there.
And how many times had you had any disciplinary actions against you before this one?
0. File is perfect.
So just for that, you were just terminated?
Yes.
No warning, no nothing?
And another thing that violated my privacy, the airport knew 3 days before my termination date. I knew my termination date, but the entire airport knew. So that was a violation of my privacy.
Okay.
I'll step aside and let somebody else talk. Is that okay?
Did you have any questions, Alderwoman?
No, no.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Oh, Jesus. Jocelyn, did you still want to speak? All right, come right ahead.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jocelyn Robinson, former Southwest employee, former AirTran Airways employee. I opened up AirTran Airways in April 2007 here in St. Louis. It was wonderful. Small number of people, small number of flights. After the tornado came into St. Louis and it ruined the area that we were in on the C concourse, then we had to go over to the East Terminal. We had our own area, counter space, and one gate set up. From the first day we started over there, we were treated like dogs from the Southwest employees. And that was also at the time that Southwest was considering purchasing AirTran Airways. There were talks that once the AirTran employees were coming over, what was going to happen is we were going to merge into the seniority lists. They wanted us to start at the bottom. And so once the company bought us, Southwest, we came over, we merged, we bumped them down. From then on, it seems like it was a premeditated plan to eliminate AirTran employees one by one. One particular day, I went to go visit my son in Arizona on the first flight out in the morning. I was running behind, but I made the flight, did not cause a delay. There was a supervisor standing at the gate. She let me down the jet bridge. There was a operations manager at the bottom. We spoke, said good morning. As soon as I boarded, the aircraft door closed. The aircraft did not take a delay. By the time I got to Phoenix, Arizona, I had messages on my phone telling me to talk to a union rep. I have a hearing. When I come back, there is talk that I breached security. I got checked in at security. I am, as a matter of fact, a previous TSA agent at the airport. I know the rules. I got a boarding pass and I went through security with my belongings, just as a passenger is supposed to. When I came back from my trip, the next day I had a hearing. We got in there, pretty much nothing was said. A decision has been determined that you're terminated. So they asked me for my badge. I have a clean file, no problems whatsoever, no form of discipline in my file. And that was the that was the outcome.
Explain how they suggested that you breached security again, because I'm familiar with the process.
Yes.
I used to fly every day of my life for years, and so I need to hear that again.
Well, there was talk that I was told not to go down the jet bridge. But as a matter of fact, the operations manager at the time, like I said, and other agents were right down at the bottom of that aircraft, went through the door was closed. Had I breached security, the aircraft should have been dumped, should have been deplaned. Everyone should have come off that aircraft. Like I said, we didn't take a delay. I got there, came back, and they took my badge. There was talk after I got fired that one of the supervisors said, I didn't know Jocelyn was going to get fired. Had I known that, I wouldn't have had other people write statements on her. Okay.
Okay, all right. Did you have any questions, Alderwoman? No, I don't. All right, thank you. The next person on the list, Ms. Hunter, did you still want to speak? It says Chandler Hunter. Oh, that's a guy's name, I'm sorry. That was me, but he can speak. Oh, okay. I don't think he signed.
How you
Go right
doing,
ahead,
ma'am?
sir. State your name and go ahead and speak.
My name is Carl Withers Jr. I'm actually a former customer service and operations supervisor at Southwest. I was actually, first, I was promoted off of probation. I came from another airline. I was promoted off of probation, which is kind of unheard of for Southwest. But then after I got promoted, I was told by everybody that I only got promoted because I was African American, and they were trying to, like, because when I got there, everybody was all Caucasian. So they wanted to switch. I think we had probably 4 members of management that were African American, and so I would have made the 5th, I think, if that. So they were trying to shift. Now the whole thing is all African American, and they probably have 4 Caucasian. It's flipped since in that 4 years. So I think they probably did recognize they were making some mistakes. One thing that happened to me personally was 2 managers got sent away because of direct testimony from me and another lady. They demoted her, and then they actually terminated me. They demoted her. She got either asked to resign or demoted. I wasn't going to do that, so.
So what was the cause that they indicated for your termination?
According to them, it said that I lost the ability to effectively lead. That was what they said.
And that was based on what?
You gotta ask them.
So they didn't present you with any complaints on your assistance to the people that you were managing, directions that you were given, the obstruction of the ability for things to be done timely and/or correct? You didn't get any of that?
No, ma'am. I have my performance evaluations. I have, like, most of my file, because I was a part of management. I have tattoos. I'm from East St. Louis. I have tattoos. I'm a different kind of person, I guess, to them. Although I might not look like it, I'm a very educated young man. I have a bachelor's degree in business. I just don't fit that little thing for
Were you
them.
doing the job?
I got promoted off of probation. That's a kind of an unheard thing of at Southwest Airlines. I'm really smart. I just probably don't look like it to them, or didn't act like it to them. My situation, I was made to sit in the break room for 30 days as a part of I'm a military person, by the way, so we don't sit with, the officers, so my mindset was a little bit different at the time when I first got there. But when I first got there, they made me sit in the break room for 30 days to get to know. I have 17 people on my team, something like that. So they made me sit in the break room to get to know them, and because I didn't eat with them, so stuff like that, I was kind of outcasted in that situation. It's really cliquey, and I came here to work. That's my mentality. That was my thought process. I think she was on my, yeah, it was just the way that it was.
So your employer told you where to sit for lunch?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, it's a part of a coaching, yeah, you have to, their philosophy is you gotta know your people, you gotta know that you are,
But you
external
interact
customers.
all day long in order to get the task completed on behalf of Southwest and its operations daily.
I apologize, say that first part again?
You interact with people all day long in order to accomplish the operations on behalf of Southwest.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you would get to know them as you all are interacting in order to complete the task of the day.
You would think. But according to them, where you eat lunch is important. Like where I eat lunch is important to them. So my team consisted of more Caucasian than African American. I have a really good leadership. I was in the Navy. I was actually a leader in the military. I was there when I was 17. I've never not led something. So I knew what I was doing. It's just they didn't like the way that you do it. If you're not in their clique, then you're not really good for them. I had a Caucasian person violate what we call a CITA. It's a little badge that we have to let you go through different doors. And I was walking through this side door that was secured. He was coming, like we were going opposite of each other, and he didn't have on his badge, and he had on regular clothes. I didn't even know him. He had been there, I guess, 20 years. I had never seen him before. I've only been there 4 at this point. And so I asked him where was his cider badge at. He told me, F you. So he caught my attention because I had my phone in my hand. And when he told me F you, I'm like, whoa. And so I asked him, did he work for Southwest? Because again, I don't even know him. I'd never had seen him before. So the long story of it, he Caucasian. He called another manager on his cell phone because what I did was I actually, when you challenge somebody, if they don't want to do it, then you don't have, you can't make them. You get a description, you give it to the police. So I just took a picture of him, and I actually was going to just use that for the police. Well, the manager that he called, he said, you shouldn't have took that picture, where is it at, blah, 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 blah. And then he said that, he's going to deal with it. They didn't do anything. That was a violation of CITA airport security. But that was a Caucasian that's in this report that has been Southwest's nightmare forever, but they are so cliquey that they chose not to do anything to him. They chose not to deal with him, even though that's a direct violation of not just Southwest, the airport's CITA to carry that badge. He should have lost his badge, and which subsequently lost his job, but he actually got okay to just come back to work the next day like nothing had ever happened. So that manager, Caucasian manager, told me, can we just let this go? I said no, because he had cursed me and a couple other things in the process. So a couple of days later, they actually were going to write me up because I had taken a picture of him. So they tried to use that, well, you took the picture of him, you shouldn't have did that. That's a violation. So if you let this go, we'll let you let this go that you took his picture. So I actually took it to the airport CITA department, and then I said, is this a violation? They said no. That you can take a picture of somebody as long as you are using it in this matter. And so we went back to Southwest and talked to them and said, no, we're not going to let it go. Then they actually did discipline me for taking the picture.
You were doing your job.
I thought so.
Okay. Did you have any questions, Alderwoman? This is really getting to me.
Document it.
Okay.
These are things that I have documented, not just
I appreciate your documentation. We'll probably all be reviewing it as we move forward. Thank you, sir. All right, come on.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Melvin Garnett. I'm from Fort Lauderdale Station.
Okay.
And pretty much I came as for the hope as things that's happening here is happening in Houston, Nashville. I was a union rep for the company. I've been there since March 21st, 2011. I've been fired twice in the last 6 months.
Wait a minute. You've been fired twice
Yeah,
in the last 6 months.
yes.
So
And
how did you get an opportunity to come back?
well, unfortunately, with this gentleman right here, as far as, I don't know him, you know what I'm saying, but as a supervisor, they don't have to, they could fire you for anything. They could just say, you looked at me wrong, and you're fired. As far as with me, I'm with the union. So
Okay,
there's
so you-
arbitration, I have an arbitration hearing June 29th. I have an arbitration hearing with, in Dallas. Last time they fired me because I had a union meeting telling we had a, I don't know if you remember, but Hurricane, I think it was Maria. I told everybody, listen, go home and take care of your family. Take a personal day. You know what I'm saying? Do not call out sick. You know what I'm saying? They do not care about you. You need to take care of your family. Go home, board your house, get your kids out of here, do whatever you got to do. This is a Hurricane 5. Andrew was a Hurricane 4. You know what I'm saying? I was fired. Well, when I said it, I said, and then they came back and they went back 2 months later and said, oh, you called out from Jamaica and whatever. So I gave them the doctor's note from when I called out. They still fired me. You know what I'm saying? They took 5 days and they fired me. So I got my job back pay, $15,000, et cetera, and then I came back again. So one thing with me is the reason why I'm at Southwest Airlines is when I was doing my master's, it was the fourth best company to work for. As I'm reading it, you know what I'm saying? Printers Hall, I don't know if they got a contract with them, but everything looked beautiful. So that's what I aimed at. I was a court reporter before that, 10 years. So when I came, I couldn't get an interview. I was trying to move up in the company. I'm trying to be the CEO, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to be up there, you know what I'm saying? I got this degree for it, why not? I couldn't even get an interview. At that time, I never threw the race card on the table. You know what I'm saying? I just kept working hard, et cetera. Could not get an interview. I was getting written up for little stuff, you know what I'm saying, like petty stuff. So I'm like, why am I getting written up for this, et cetera, et cetera. So I left to Chicago because they said it's a Southwest way. And I wasn't getting that in Fort Lauderdale. So I went to Chicago, went to Denver, beautiful, no issues. I got 3 houses in Miami. So I came back to Miami because, I'm dealing with, tenants and stuff, you know what I'm saying? So when I come back, it's the same issues again. I tried to go into when I put in my transfer to come back from Chicago, they sent me a threat. I told the company, nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like so when I come back, I'm the type of person, as a boss, I come and I speak to you, hello, as a union rep. Your supervisor just cursed out this agent. I would like to know why, and why are you allowing this to happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing. After that, I started sending emails to everybody, Gary Kelly, employee relations, labor relations, Juan Suarez, the lawyer, everybody. And it's happening. So make a long story short, I worked 46 days before I was fired again. When I came back, I wrote up 3 supervisors got in 4 black agents' faces, got up in their face, spit flying, you know what I'm saying, on a constant basis. This is happening. It happened to me. It happened to me like maybe in 2012, it happened to me. November 2012, it happened to me. I reported it, nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? And they have a policy like no fighting, language, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, why is this happening? So I sent the email with like 13 different incidences, A and B. This is the white person, this is the black person, this is the white person, this is the black person. Why is it being handled in 2 different ways? No response. So I get with employee relations, and I send the email. I said, look, I sent this response a year ago. I'm asking you to come down here and talk to these agents. Don't listen to me what I'm saying. Come down here and talk to them. And like right now, y'all are saying the EOC. I filed an EOC complaint August 11th. I was fired September 29th. When they called me back, when I got my job back February 6th, they said, hey, since you got your job back, do you want to, I was like, no, I've been telling y'all about this racist stuff for years. I'm not dropping anything. So the next time I was fired, if you Google my name, it says a lawsuit. I sued a company. So then they came back and said, oh, you were, when you lied in your initial application, you were fired in 2007. I have a confidentiality agreement that they don't know about, and it says resigned. You know what what I'm saying? Like, I have documentation that I'm gonna show them next week, and they're gonna pay me another paycheck, you know what I'm saying, to sit at home and relax, that says, you know what I'm saying, that I resigned. You know what I'm saying? Somebody said something to me and I walked out, you know what I'm saying? Like, that was my job before that, you know what I'm saying? So, it's incidences that's going on, like, on a constant basis, but the problem that I have is, I tell them, like, respect is free, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get along with all the supervisors, you know what I'm saying? I have no issues, I do my job, you know what I'm saying? But, and then another thing, just like him, they wrote me up, they have a thing called doing labs, which is like dumping the plane. So, I was getting off in like 15 minutes, so the other guy was supposed to come in and do the job. I told him, I said, hey, I didn't do this plane right here, and I went to the supervisor and said, look, I did all these planes right here, this one right here gotta be done, and I told the guy that's taking my place the same thing. So they said, oh, you're supposed to work until 5 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to leave at 5 o'clock and I'm out there dumping the plane? And they was like, oh, you get off at 5 o'clock. And it's like, I'm not working until, I'm not gonna be outside at the plane at 5 o'clock. I'm not working for free, you know what I'm saying? So they wrote me up for that. So when I got that write-up, I went back and I wrote a big statement of everything that happened, me communicating, because they wrote me up saying I didn't communicate, and also, I don't know, oh, missing a flight. That's how they wrote it up, missing a flight. And it's like, as a lab driver, you don't have flights, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know that, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it just it's like it gets done or it doesn't get done. And the plane was done, so I'm asking, why was I written up? No response. Like, they don't respond to anything, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't, the bottom of this NAACP thing, Juan Suarez, he was the same guy that, when I sent the email saying, I sent you a whole bunch of complaints and no response, he said, okay, somebody's gonna call you. Southwest lawyer hired a private investigator who called me. We sat on the phone, because I'm suing Southwest now, even though I had my job back, I was still suing them anyway. So I sat on the phone with them for about 5 hours telling them all of these incidences. 2 days later, I get a fact finder saying, oh, your 2011 application, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm just like, okay, cool. And I already know what they're gonna try to do, so when I go in there, I'm reading them the if anybody asks you about this incident, you must say it was resolved. I can't talk about it. They didn't like that, so, but that's what it says. I'm not allowed to talk about it. It's a confidentiality agreement. So when I go to arbitration next week, I'm gonna show the arbitrator the whole entire document.
One of the things that is amazing in all of that has been said is the facts are pretty clear. Because I was going to ask you a question. When you were disciplined for sending employees home, we can make an assumption that there were no flights going out. That's a fact. We can also make an assumption that you did provide a skeleton crew that remained there to do any types of things that needed to be done, but you were still reprimanded.
Well, the thing was they had temps fly in from Baltimore, because we were supposed to be able to go home and board up our homes. That's what the company did, something amazing to me. They brung in planes for us to fly out of the state.
But you were reprimanded.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, but I'm saying they noted the company did that, but the station penalized people. You know what I'm saying? Imagine, oh man, my company is great, man. They flew me out. A hurricane was coming. I was stressed out. My wife was pregnant. You know what I'm saying? And oh man, it's great. And then when you come back, you got a point. And I told them we had like 5 more hurricanes coming after that. So I'm like, listen, don't be upset about these points. I don't care about these points. You know what I'm saying? I keep my points low for situations for this. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about it. Make sure your family is good first. You know what I'm saying? Do not worry about these points. But at the same time, I'm asking the company and I'm asking the station managers, like, how does the company give you a plane to get employees out of here, and when they come back in, you, not the company, you prosecute these people? So they remove the points, but then they fire me, you know what I'm saying, after my speech, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, how does that work?
So here's what I have. Alderwoman, did you have any questions? Okay. I believe you were, did you decide you didn't want to speak? You're good, okay. So that was the last person to speak. You have one more thing?
One more thing, there's 3 other people that did EOC complaints, and all 3 was fired, you know, just so you know.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to get some documentation that really shares these numbers with us. What I'd like to conclude this hearing with is that you do understand that the Transportation Committee has, as the part of the Board of Aldermen, has the right to investigate situations that affect our city. We also know that it is important for any operation that takes place in our city that it is fair and equitable to all. We also know that it is important for our public to understand and must have factual information. So you have spoken. It was very important for you to give facts, not just emotions. We have had a report that is going to be in the records from the NAACP. It's a report on the racial environment at Southwest Airlines, St. Louis Station. We will also bring this before our committee after we've received some additional information for us to continue to probe and determine where and how we shall move forward on behalf of the city of St. Louis. And I shall end this before we adjourn with a clear understanding for the public as a whole. Southwest Airlines has been a member of the region of the city of St. Louis for a number of years. We have interacted with them on various levels throughout our community. We do know who they are. We do also know that they have a side of them that has contributed to our community as a whole in a philanthropic way that has been very beneficial to this community. We are not taking any of those things away from them, but what we are going to do is to make sure that our employees, our residents who live and work in the city of St. Louis are treated fairly, and not only that, the other people who are employed there, and I have to say that again, because I've been in a situation like that. You may work somewhere and view all of this, and you can become physically ill. You can have stress upon you. You can suffer in so many ways by working in an environment like that, even though you're not the one that's being disciplined or anything. So we have to have remedy for everybody that's employed there. That is the goal. I adjourn the meeting at this moment, and I thank you all for this information, and we shall meet again.